Are you ready for a number that shouldn't make sense? Nearly 40% of people earning over $300,000 a year say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Think about that for a second. At what point is income supposed to solve the problem? At what number does financial stress finally disappear? Because most of us believe there's a level where everything gets easier, where money creates space, not pressure. But what if that curve doesn't keep going down? What if it bends and turns back on you? There's a level where income stops solving the problem and quietly starts creating a new one. For most of your life, you've probably been told a very simple formula. Earn more money, save more of it, and eventually you'll be fine. Retirement becomes a math problem. Income goes up, savings go up, and stress is supposed to go down. It feels logical. It feels predictable. And for a long time, it actually worked that way. The assumption behind this model is quiet but powerful. Your core expenses stay relatively stable. As your income grows, it outpaces those costs. And saving for the future mostly competes with things you want, not things you need. So higher income should create more breathing room, more margin, more control over your life. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Ted here. I'm not some financial genius or anything like that. I just like breaking money stuff down so it actually makes sense. Because something has shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but enough that more people are starting to feel it. The formula still looks the same on paper, but in real life, it doesn't behave the way you expect anymore. So what exactly changed? At first, it doesn't look like anything is wrong. Your income goes up. Your life improves. You upgrade a few things that make sense. A better place to live, a safer neighborhood, a more reliable car, better options for your family. None of these feel reckless. In fact, they feel responsible. But slowly, something begins to shift. Each of those upgrades doesn't just improve your lifestyle. It adds another layer to your financial structure. A slightly higher payment here, a recurring cost there, a commitment that follows you every single month. And over time, those layers don't stay flexible. They settle. They harden. What used to be optional starts to feel required. And this is where the pattern changes. Your income is still rising, but it's no longer creating space. It's being absorbed, redirected, locked into a growing list of obligations that are very hard to undo. Some analysts have a name for this. They call it a kind of financial vortex. Not because people are making bad decisions, but because a series of reasonable decisions begin to pull in more of your income than you expected. It doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like progress. But it moves you in a very different direction than you planned. To really understand this, you have to zoom in on how the trap forms over time, because it doesn't happen all at once. It builds in layers. The first layer is expansion. As your income grows, your life expands with it. You move into a better home, which often means a higher mortgage, higher property taxes, and higher maintenance costs. You add a second car because your schedule demands it. Insurance premiums increase because the value of what you own increases. None of this feels excessive. It feels like you're simply keeping up with your life. Then comes the second layer. Normalization. After a while, these upgrades stop feeling like upgrades. They become your baseline. The higher payment is no longer a decision you revisit. It's just part of your monthly reality. The second car isn't a luxury anymore. It's necessary. Childcare, education, healthcare. All of these costs stop being flexible. They become expected. And then the third layer sets in lock-in. This is where things change in a meaningful way. Because now, reversing any of these decisions becomes difficult. You can't easily move your family to a smaller home without disruption. You can't simply remove expenses that are tied to your children, your health, or your responsibilities. What used to be adjustable becomes fixed. This is the moment where your financial structure hardens. At the same time, your savings system is also running in the background. Contributions are automated. You're putting money into retirement accounts. You're doing what you're supposed to do. But those contributions start to feel less like choices and more like obligations. So when something unexpected happens, a sudden expense, a disruption, a change in income, the pressure doesn't disappear. Because there's no space left to absorb it. Your income grew, your life improved, but your flexibility quietly disappeared. Now this is where the story takes a turn. Because up to a certain point, everything behaves exactly the way you'd expect. As income increases, financial stress tends to go down. For households earning between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, about 25% say they're living paycheck to paycheck. That makes sense. At that level, the problem is usually simple. There just isn't enough income to cover everything comfortably. As you move up the ladder into the $100,000 to $300,000 range, something interesting happens. This is where we see the lowest levels of financial strain. More people report making steady progress. More people feel like they're getting ahead. In this range, income is still solving problems faster than new ones are being created. But then, the curve breaks. Once income crosses into the $300,000 range, the pattern reverses. Around 40% of households at this level say they're living paycheck to paycheck. In the $300,000 to $500,000 range, that number rises to about 41%. And even above $500,000, roughly 36% still describe their situation the same way. That shouldn't happen. At higher incomes, stress is supposed to disappear, not come back. But the data shows something very different. The issue isn't how much you earn anymore. It's how much of your income is already spoken for. At this point, you might be thinking something doesn't add up. How can someone earning $300,000 or even $500,000 a year be living paycheck to paycheck? Doesn't that mean they're not saving, not investing, not being responsible? But that's not what the data shows. In fact, around 55% of these households increased their retirement savings in the past year. Only about 8% reported decreasing it. Many are still contributing to retirement accounts consistently. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So what's the problem? It's not that there's no saving. It's that there's no flexibility left. After the mortgage, the childcare, the insurance, the education costs, and the automatic contributions, there's nothing left to adjust. No buffer, no room to absorb a shock. You're doing everything right, but there's no space left to breathe. Here's what makes this even more surprising. The most financially stable households in this data are often not the highest earners. They tend to fall in the $100,000 to $300,000 range, not because they earn the most, but because their income still creates room instead of pressure. At that level, income is high enough to solve everyday problems, but not so high that it forces you into a more complex, obligation-heavy lifestyle. You haven't fully stepped into the system that locks your costs in place. In this range, money still works for you. Above it, it often starts working against you. So what actually happens when flexibility disappears? It doesn't show up all at once. It shows up in small decisions. A surprise expense hits, and instead of adjusting your budget, you pause your investments. Or you put the cost on a credit card planning to deal with it later. Maybe you stretch your timeline. You tell yourself you'll just retire a few years later. Nothing dramatic, just small shifts. But those shifts start to stack, and over time, they change the entire trajectory of your financial life. Because when there's no room in your system, every unexpected event forces a trade-off. Save less, borrow more, delay progress. This is the real risk. Not that you run out of money, but that you lose control over how your money moves. You stop making proactive decisions and start reacting instead. You didn't suddenly become irresponsible. You just built a structure with no margin. And when there's no margin, even a high income can feel fragile. At this point, it's easy to label this as lifestyle inflation. You earn more, you spend more. Simple. But that explanation misses something important. Lifestyle inflation is a choice. It's flexible. You can scale it up or down. What we're talking about here is different. These aren't just spending decisions anymore. They've turned into commitments. That's the shift. It's lifestyle inflation that became permanent. The house, the schools, the insurance, the expectations. They don't adjust easily. They don't disappear when your situation changes. So the issue isn't that you chose to spend more. It's that you built a system where spending can't go back down. So what can you actually do with this? The first shift is simple, but not easy. Stop measuring success only by income or net worth. Start measuring flexibility. Ask yourself a different question. If something unexpected happened tomorrow, how many months could you absorb without changing your long-term plan? That number matters more than your salary. The second shift is to treat complexity like a real cost. Every upgrade adds weight. A bigger home, a better school, a nicer car. They don't just increase your lifestyle. They increase your fixed commitments. Before you say yes, ask yourself, does this give me more control or less? And the third shift is to protect the range where money still works in your favor. That $100,000 to $300,000 zone is where income still creates space. Don't rush to outgrow it without building buffers first. And just to be clear, this isn't about avoiding success. It's about building a life where success doesn't quietly take your options away. If you zoom out, the pattern becomes clear. At lower incomes, the problem is not having enough. At higher incomes, the problem quietly becomes having too much already committed. One struggles with sufficiency. The other struggles with structure. And that's the line that changes everything. Because financial security isn't just about how much you earn. It's about how much of your income is still yours to control. You can outspend any income. So the goal isn't to chase a bigger number. It's to build a life where your money still gives you room to move. If this made you think, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective.